the less I question about that, the more I give free rein for the universe to work through me, is really how I'm seeing. So I think where we are going with channeling, with healing, with all of these things, and it might be a slow process or it might happen really quickly, is people getting with the program, you know, what we were talking before, just literally clicking in and going, I'm not doing it, I am it. The more I just accept that I am a part of the universe and that I can just let go and in a sense be nothing and everything at the same time.
So, 2025 is such an interesting time because people are raising the bar of their own awareness, whether it's committing to other forces outside of human life on planet Earth, alien, introspective analysts, or personally feeling into more that there's something greater than their personality, which is where we lie with a mastered state like yourself, being involved with such a close relationship of an energy that is clearly transmitting wisdom to an earthly plane that is struggling with distortion, attempting to reconstruct and restore some type of normalcy. So with that, what would you recommend as someone that's experiencing something? They can't define it, but they know something's trying to break through to the other side, as Jim Morrison would say.
Yeah, the great sage, Jim Morrison. Ain't that the truth? Where would we even start with that? Well, I really think that the times that we're living in are a time of breakdown to breakthrough. It's that whole thing. We've been moving through destruction energy for such a long time, and we're seeing it in our external world, but we're seeing it in our internal world. And if you're in the position where you've been feeling something, but you don't know quite what it is, or you've even turned to things before and it hasn't been quite right for you at the time, and then you're coming back, to me, that feels like your heart is telling you, no, this is the time to build, but not just rebuild. There's no point knocking down a house and then making exactly the same house afterwards. It's rebuilding the new, and we're in that new frequency now. The frequency is constantly changing. It's moving to a lighter, everyone talks this buzzword light, but it literally is a lighter frequency. And when you even gauge emotions, when they can be monitored, the frequency, the lighter ones of happiness and joy and bliss are always on the lighter end of the spectrum. So I really feel like our hearts are almost like aching for that again. It is an incredible, incredible time to be alive. So much is happening in human history at this point, and none so more than internally. I personally believe it's pushing us to a level of self-discipline in it, for self-mastery, to move through a lot of the things that we have been holding on to or having trouble with. And we're in a time as well that I believe is populated far more with compassion. We might not see it everywhere, but actually, if we think back, 50 years, 100 years, was there such a great compassion for maybe people who don't seem to be like ourselves? You might have compassion for your family or compassion for your neighbor or your community, but outside of that, we're seeing that so much greater. And what we're starting to see from the outside, I think, is being reflected within. So it can start from within, but it can also be from things on the outside. So that start point, as you said there, of something doesn't feel right or off, or something needs to happen, I would pose the question, what needs to happen? What do you need to become more of yourself? Zac uses this expression, the term of betterment, be better every day than you were before. So it's not about perfection. We're living in an imperfect world, and that is exactly as it should be, I believe, for our experience. But it's about what can I do for betterment for myself, and then through self for others, for nature, for the world, whatever it is. And this collective force, this year in particular, moving into next year, I personally feel we will be seeing things so much more on a collective. And actually, if you are in that situation where you're feeling something is off and you had to sort of almost toddle off on your own, I know I did, I don't know about yourself, when I was a kid, when I was discovering things, it was quite a lonely place. You felt like no one else was having these experiences, and you might be getting things from here or there, but it's a lot more all-encompassing, a lot more embracing. Things aren't necessarily just completely dissed these days. There's a lot more respect to being given to people's feelings as well. And I think there's an awful lot of help out there. And, you know, with the tech we've got these days, there's all sorts of things you can just, you know, we used to have to go off hundreds of miles or thousands of miles, maybe in some people's cases, to find what we need. And often now you can do it, you know, sitting in your bedroom on your phone or whatever else. So yeah, that's for me where I feel we're actually going from destruction into, this is the creative period Zac's been talking about, creation, very much for this year, but that we're going to start seeing it manifest far more in reality, you know, our dreams more turning into the reality over the next year into 2027 as well. But it's not a given. All these things, any channel will tell, or what we're feeling inside, because we are all channels. There isn't, again, any sort of, oh, this person can do this. We can go into our heart space and feel into these things. And this is the potential of what's coming. But as human beings, I believe we all have free will and choice. And therefore, we have to make the choices to make those things happen as well. So quite a lot of little different sprinklings there. How do you feel about it?
Well, you know, I mean, you start to recognize a narrative that is more psyche based, not psychic based, but psyche based, and you know, furthermore, this introspective, analytical, incessant, finite mind that is bankrupt, that doesn't actually bear any fruit, is the conflict that most human beings refer to as a condition. You know, some way of being lesser than because of their environment, an exogenous sort of state that really is your personality, your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are far from the true holy stream of who you are. Yet people that get excited with the deduction of the Sherlock to Watson experience as you go through the labyrinth of your finite mind, come at the other end, and beingness is the new favorite flavor when you recognize that condition comes from, you know, what you have determined as a deficient sort of resonance. It's a distortion because of your transition from a single stream, creating these variables. We talk about the symbiotic dance, the tango between yin and yang, and yin being the inversion of all colors, yang being the emission of all colors. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find that center point and walk through that vesicle and dissolve centric or non-centric, dualist, non-dualist perspectives, and recognize that from a Taoist perspective, the great bellows is you are all things and nothing. Everything, you're contracting, expanding at the same time. You're everything and nothing at the same time. When you recognize that, all iterations are a variable of self and return to nothing. And this is the exciting time when you have wisdom that's being transmitted from you as a beacon through this incredible vehicle and vessel and messaging that is so potent. You feel that charge, that resonance, that union we're having right now. We feel it viscerally. This is when we know we're in the right spot. We're in the right place. Yet what I find over, you know, my journey in this space for, I don't know, maybe I'm older than time, I don't know, but I've been witnessing this, let me just put it that way, for quite some time biologically. And I must say, the biggest pitfall for anybody on this journey, even though it's so reassuring when we hear messages that are clear from either my teacher Lutzu or your teacher Zac or whatever, you're getting a message that it internalizes from here and then emanates out. It's not an external like permeation, which is very fragile, very shallow, very much like a broken sort of message. You want to make sure that it's coming from the core, and you'll know that from the body. But the biggest thing is the inversion. So people are discovering their superpowers, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's like, I'm psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a channeler, I'm a healer. All these things are just parts of self. Now, the biggest issue that I noticed is that people ride it until the hubcaps come off. So they're like, okay, I'm now this emanated state, but you're embodying one side of a distortion because you have yet to meet that unified stream that is whole. That is the culmination, the congruence and convergence of everything as one, past, present, and future together. So healers, or psychics or mediums or channels, they invert that into their body, and their avatar is where things start to break down, because they're still processing fear or fearless type of scenarios that are still not actualized as an embodiment. So they've got this taste of the spiritual dragon, the bite of the spiritual dragon we speak of, and then they're excited. They're like, oh my goodness, this is beyond whatever. I mean, I was watching Harry Potter, now I'm living it, absolutely. But now the rubber meets the road. So what would you suggest? So someone, because I mean, our conversation briefly before we started, talking about I can, very, very comfortably stream Zac at will to whatever duration of time. This is not a common denominator or consistency for most channels or healers.
No.
They burn their candle at two ends. This is where I have to condition them from the lower body emanated state, where they are feeling into the roots that connect them from the universe to the earth. And this avatar is a lens that they're looking through. So what is the secret source that you've recognized that makes that a different variable that most people are not acknowledging yet? I know that was a big mouthful. Sorry.
No, it's so interesting, because we often look at things like channeling, healing, all the sorts of things that used to be thought of as quite supernatural now is becoming the norm, a lot more of the norm. And we can stop there. We can say, oh, I'm healing, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And we think of it, even as I'm saying it, I am doing this, I'm doing it. Just like we've got physical bodies, and we're thinking of it a little bit like a task. Well, I am doing this. I was recognized as a trance medium, a bit like you, old as time. I'm knocking on a bit now. It was a very long time ago. And back then, people really did look to this handful of channels and really thought of it as this, no one else can do this. And they hung on every word that was coming through from the spirit guides. And I moved away from it, mainly because I felt more a debt to the people who had really helped me with my energy, helped me sort out a lot of things to train, because they seemed to be so excited about it. And I felt it icky. I didn't like it. I had a lot of fear back then, as you said, it takes you into the deepest parts of you, the parts that on everyday life you might find compartmentalized, and it shone a light on it, and I really didn't like it, and I didn't want to be it at that time. This was, then that was probably about early 80s or whatever. I really didn't like the feel of what other people thought about it, or that suddenly people looked at you differently, and so I moved away from it. So I've had lots of different perspectives on channeling. Sort of when I came back to it, the more common name for it now is channeling. And initially, because it was like a default within my system, this was something that I seemed to have this very natural ability to do. We always work with the higher vibrations, higher than the dense physical self. with the idea that, or the intention, not the idea, that what would be coming through was appropriate at that time for what it was doing, until it got refined into a very compatible light being energy. I still don't exactly, the terms change and everything is one. So it's very hard to put a label, but people like labels, to put a label on Zac, but to have this energy source that isn't held in by a physical body, has a great expansive wisdom that can take from lots of different things and come through. And over the years, a lot of things have changed. And right in the beginning, when he said that he was a guide for the future, I took that a bit too literally, I think, in my heart. But what I see now is the future, as I mentioned about the self-mastery, is actually learning about ourselves as a powerful force of, at the same time, being everything. We are part of everything. And that enormity can be too much, I think, for a lot of people, which is why we end up segregating and labeling and saying, well, this is what I'm doing, this is what I am, rather than this is the whole being. And at the same time, knowing that everything is infinite, and therefore you're not even a tiny speck anymore. So you're everything and you're nothing. So I'm looking at maybe from a different perspective, just from my, training, learning experience with Zac, or not just with Zac, but all other life experiences, all the other work I did as well, or do. I just think of myself really as an energy worker rather than, label as in energy is my work. And it's a way of putting that across. So we get what we feel we need on an everyday basis to work through all these things that are about life. Well, I feel that there's an undercurrent, and this is what I really love, Channelling Zac, and for those who bring through that voice, as it were, that energy that is just going into the full expanded state. That is probably why, I don't know exactly why I am so sort of intertwined. I keep things separate because I like to live my life as Janet as well. I don't feel that it's for me to become like as one, enmeshed the whole time. However, if I go into that state of being, I used to be what we called an outer body channel, and I had an energetic space, a meadow, and I used to take my consciousness there, and it would be just as real as the room around me is now, so that I could feel comfortable and completely, as I felt Zac, inhabiting my body, using my body as a vehicle to talk to people. That has shifted and changed. So now it's actually a transmission. So it's as if I'm imagining, that's probably the wrong word, but how when I go into it, I welcome in the wisdom of Zac, and it comes through my heart space, but it then transmits through everything. So the more that I let go of the idea of me as Janet and a separate entity, and what my personal likes, dislikes, all of this sort of stuff and life is going on, the more I just accept that I am a part of the universe, and that I can just let go and in a sense be nothing and everything at the same time. It gives freedom to that lighter vibration than myself in the physical form to be able to bring through this wisdom of ages. I literally think of it, I'm doing it like that because it literally feels like it's being gathered. The less I question about that, the more I give free rein for the universe to work through me, is really how I'm seeing. So I think where we are going with channeling, with healing, with all of these things, and it might be a slow process or it might happen really quickly, is people getting with the program, what we were talking before, just literally clicking in and going, I'm not doing it, I am it. I'm not doing healing. I'm putting myself into the space to allow the universe work through me to what we as humans would label healing. I'm actually just allowing the energy of opportunity of the higher potential, and that higher potential might be to fix certain things, whether they're physical, emotional, whatever that might be. So I think it is that expanded state. I think it is us moving into this self-mastery, but through that, he calls it spiritual maturity. It's the spiritual maturity. We've been told for such a long time we're souls, having, you know, an experience in a physical body. And that is so commonplace now, where it was quite new not so long ago. And now I think we're moving on to actually seeing ourselves not just as souls, again, individual, but the collective experience of the universe, learning, experiencing, expanding through everything that the universe is happening. And we're one of those happenings within the universe. Doesn't matter that we're a human. We are just part of this particular universe, and this is what's happening. That's how it feels to me.
Amen to that. Yay. Hallelujah. I mean, the sense to nonsense to just incense, we find that this is a present moment. You know, within Taoism, we found the foundation of magic is deeply rooted into our relationship with the primordial mother, the Wu Ji, which is the holy stream that is the unification of all things. And when she is present, the animation is clear, the spirit is evident, and all things are malleable within a distorted material state. This is what we refer to as immortality crystallized in the material. This is where you bring heaven to earth. And this is where things are now. All bets are off. We can take option A, option B, option C, option Z. They're all going to, all rivers will return back to the ocean. And that ancient art form is what we refer to as the rhapsody to the remedy. And so we go deep into how powerful, once conjured, these words of vehicles of divinity that alter and return everything to holiness. And that's where the mother is present. And that charge that you and I are getting right now is we're doing the little tango. We're feeling the emanated visceral effects of that because it is true. It goes beyond the mind. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. Feeling is a truth serum that doesn't require your participation ever. And that's that part where through conditioning, through repeatability, you start to feel into the truth, that where you can be a solid stream of wisdom that is not broken or fractured in any way, and it doesn't require your participation, i.e. the limited state of mortality through the body. What is looking back at you, that flesh and blood in the mirror, is nothing more than a facet of your potential. But once met, you actualize the body. You basically create the sacred space as it is an altar, and then you're able to basically run ground control to Major Tom. This is where it pops off. And I think Avatar, people get completely distorted. And so most psychics, medium channelers, I get a lot of students that are Brahmin, cosmic consciousness, spent 20 years healing millions of people, but the hubcaps come off the wheels. And they're like, I don't understand this. I was like, I went from all powerful, you know, I mean, there's different levels. I think they call it samadhi, 1, 2, 5, whatever it is. But they embody everything. And now all of a sudden they're just a little transmitter in the corner of the room, just being quiet. I want to get a couple of people a little buzz. And how does it deconstruct? The deconstruction of self is really where we get into a more truth serum. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth really lies within the body, because all distortion variables are still being met by this avatar, because you cannot transmit ground control to Major Tom without this avatar. You are using it as a lens, but if the lens is no longer present within this journey, then I guess you move on to the next one, as most of my Buddhist monk friends would say. You know, I'm just sitting here looking at the dukkha. I don't give a rat's ass about the energy, San Qing. I couldn't care less how much you can harness it and play with it and heal it. And all I want to do is sit here and observe the observer of distortion. And I'm like, well, whatever floats your boat, my brother. Because the real thing is okay, you want to be the healer, the channeler, the magician. How does it settle with you? And this is a part where it's very clear, you having endured an experience within your lifetime that shows that your body has met the requirements to sustain itself. And that comes from deconstructing all need to be separate. And so for a conditioned process, you channel, you're just like, you literally meet it. I mean, I literally contribute or have contributed to the fact that everything that I've experienced, it came from, I'll try anything once and I accept everything at face value, childlike in my nature. And people are like, okay, what else is there to that, Sanqing? Well, I did go back and then become, deeply rooted in my nature as a reoccurring 1000th time Taoist priest, going over and over it. That's great. I use the system to help people find themselves, but they can also find themselves from this conversation. Don't get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen, that are listening and experience this conversation right now. Through Zac, through this situation of our conversation, you can be actualized. People are like, oh my goodness, well, this would be great. A shortcut. I like that. What is the shortcut? I mean, this is what everyone's looking for. And I think that I want your opinion, being mastered in this. What is the necessity of shortcuts? Because everyone wants, I don't want the razor burn. I don't want the prickly effects. I don't want the adverse ab reaction to myself, because I am deficient. I am a degenerate. I am a self-loathing, pitiful, sorrowful, sad, miserable individual that I don't want anyone to know that. I am light. I am the light body. I am the truth teller. Yet they're literally like an autoimmune disease cannibalizing on itself, consuming thyself, not actually allowing to be whole. What do you to your interaction and ability to integrate so easily? Because that does not happen, in my opinion, to 99% of people, and that's why they end up seeing me.
I mean, like yourself, I'm sure it's a lifetime's work. We're all the unfinished article, and even when we pop off from this place, there's still more to do. I think being a therapist for so many years and teaching therapies for years as well, as you say, almost like witnessing the human condition and having a huge amount of compassion for what us as humans not only go through and have done to us, but what we might do to other people from a very, very much in the mode of the personality self. What actually seems to be and what seems to be happening now, and what I'm seeing, reading between the lines of things that Zac's talking about, is actually the path of least resistance is the one that will get you there. What it actually is we are resisting the universe. If we're thinking of everything as we're saying as a universe, we're not even talking about the signs. Zac talks about helper guides. I talk about it a lot, because as humans, it's easier to interpret. But the bigger picture is, it is the universe. And the universe will constantly be reflecting your life back to you. What you put out is constantly mirrored back. What you feel about yourself will be constantly mirrored back. What you feel about the world will be constantly mirrored back. Therefore, a very straightforward, almost like childlike logic to me is, if we then not force, not the old idea of power and force, Zac's starting to now talk about power as well, and the energy we're going into for next year of actually really reclaiming the soul, the true soul idea of power. And that is energy, not energy to manipulate, energy to be, to radiate. The one thing that's stopping us is our own resistance, is our, you used it there, the self-loathing that some of us have or have for certain parts of us, or the shifting and moving away. So I would say it is somehow finding a way, and it might be a daily practice, to learn to accept yourself. Not I accept myself when, I accept myself if I do this. I did this horrible thing that I didn't really mean to do, and aside from that, I accept myself. Literally, if you accept yourself, in my world, and this is a very strong statement, I know I probably might not say elsewhere, but I think if you accept yourself, the universe accepts you. I think the universe accepts you anyway, but you actually feel, in a way, the acceptance because you're part of everything. And then the resistance barriers that we have in life, and we may create more, the more that we actually trust, not in anything else but ourselves as part of the universe, that it's not here to harm us, it is here to help us. The more that the resistance comes down, the more that we can engage and actually find and define our own lights, what we are, what it's a bit like the light through the, you know, the spectrum, and you see all the many different colors. It's still part of the light, but the pink looks very different from the blue. We all look very different from each other, but we are the same light. And again, something that Zac's talking about at the moment, or reminding, I think it's not that he's telling people, he's reminding what they know in their hearts, is actually you can generate this, not just be the light, generate it. The more, as you said, about being in proximity. We used to look at the sages of old and things and saying that people, when they came in their proximity, all these wonderful things happen. I personally feel that we're moving into a time where, you know, can be Joe Bloggs, can be anyone. And that's not putting them down. That's literally saying, you know, everyone is absolutely on a par. And the same with nature and animals. If we are generating the light within, it can't help but a bit like water, you know, washing out, it gets other people around. And if we have got the acceptance somewhere within us, even if we haven't done anything else, and we allow our guard down, our energetic guard, and we don't resist it, we can find change. The change only happens from within, but we get the energy, for want of the better word, something, whatever that means, whether it's more on a mental level, on a psyche sort of level that we're working it out, whether it's an emotional feeling level, a spiritual level, it will come in many different layers to help you be that. So the goal for me is not cha-la-la-la-la-la, you know, or looking at anything specific. The goal is peace, to be at peace in your own body, the vehicle that we are, and peace knowing that you can relax, as it were, and just be with the universe. And as the universe shifts and changes, and all the different influx of all the things, rather than being like a solid thing being pushed around, it flows, and you have flow in you and out of you, and just life gets so much easier from that standpoint. Zac talks about living in grace, fortitude. I'm probably going to forget some of them, but he bangs on about them the whole time. But it's grace, fortitude, love. He sees love as source energy, so the universe, rather than a sort of a love. And of course, kindness. And actually, when you look at those things, these aren't things that we're often looked at goals. These are states of being. And the more that you can be in those states of being, the more it reflects on yourself. So if you're giving out kindness, you are actually giving kindness to yourself. If you're living in grace, you're having grace to yourself. All of these sorts of things. And the fortitude, I think, comes from living in the times that we're in, to stick with the program. And that program is self, you know, that stick with that, of the self, of, you know, developing that, of being free from what we have been taught, or that we tell ourselves, more importantly, to actually have the universe as our great big guide. And this is where, you know, what Zac is saying, or it's we get the information we need from lots of different places, don't we? And the transmission that is coming through isn't about fixing people. It's about opening up and reminding themselves in lots and lots of different ways of this, so we can relax into it. Does that make sense? That's a big long speech.
Into that, amen. Now, you know, I think that you're bringing up a certain, you know, valid point of concern for most people that are still discovering themselves, and that is, you know, it can be a lifelong journey, or you can end up like a diminished, deficient individual like Steve Jobs and work out that it's much brighter than I thought it was 3 seconds before he leaves his plane.
Wow, 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 as he said, wasn't it?
Something like that, you know. Every time I ever met him, I met nothing but poison, vitriol, and you know, discontent. More, why are you even in my same stratosphere? Which has a beneath yourself sort of like implication, which doesn't make any sense. You know, I was just nothing more than an extended part of a party that was sharing in a moment of his accolades, but it seems so much deeper, more rooted, more refined as someone struggling to really meet themselves because the emotion was so strong. And of course, that's where the autoimmune disease comes in, and you rot yourself out from the inside out. And this is what happens with most people. It's like, okay, we could be one with all. Sounds like that kumbaya, my lord. And it is really this simple. And I will repeat myself: accept everything at face value, be childlike in your nature, and all will be revealed to you. You know, people always come with the stresses of the human condition. You know, I always refer to, I mean, Lao Tzu will constantly have very variables of what is the truth serum for that individual at that moment. But I always love this baseline where someone will be like, oh my goodness, what's happening with the world? I need answers. Where am I going? Do I get a boyfriend, $1 million? What's happening? And his answer is really simple. Imagine you're like a grain of sand, asking the beach, what are we doing today? Fall back into the beach and be realized. And I'm like, you can't make this shit up. And that is where the inclusive, exclusive, individual experience is actually everything, returning back to what you speak about, where, you know, really finding compassion, finding somewhere within yourself to be passive, to be inclusive, to be nurturing, to be loving in your natural default, patience, understanding, receptivity. All these things are part and parcel of you nurturing your own self-love, because your gift is your offering. Furthermore, referring to one of my teachers, Jade Emperor, he would speak on it quite simply. A power abundant in its giving you will receive. Unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. From where it will return, servitude and selflessness is the true default. And by serving others, you are serving yourself. Oh, mic drop, ladies and gentlemen. It all returns back to the wood chipper, recycles as this holiness, and we feel that potency. Just this is so oscillating, it's so reverberating, it's so expansive, this conversation, because the truth speaks louder than words. That's why we feel it. It's an experience. And you can't make this shit up, in my opinion.
It's so true. It is so true. And these different vehicles, I feel that we get there, as you said, what we actually need at that time is all pointing to the same thing ultimately, is getting us into a place where we get comfortable enough to bring down our resistance. However, the shortcut, when we were talking about shortcuts before, to me is knowing that the issue is the resistance, and then you can work straight on that. It does take a level of trust, especially if you're relatively new and it's something to this sort of conversation, to this sort of awareness of energy, because you think, well, what if I've got resistance? There'll be a good reason for it. If I step outside my door and I'm like, hey, I'm free and here's all my stuff, I'm going to get mugged or whatever else. There's a lot of conditioning in our lives as we live them now that make us think that we need resistance. But when we're talking of it on an energy level, if we think of it, or from my perspective, just how I think of it and how Zac's talked about it, is just simply, if this is where we were from, and that was a bliss state, if this is where we are and we can embody that, if we're jumping straight to that point, what is there to resist? If we are part of the universe isn't looking to harm us or cause us pain. It is simply welcoming us back into the fold of not being a separate thing. In one of the recent transmissions from Zac, he does these incredible monthly meditations, and there are these nuggets of gold when I listen back, some of the things that he says. And it was something that he was saying. He was like, be an ambassador of the light. And it can sound very cheesy. I use that a lot, how I was brought up, that was very much like, oh, what does that mean? But actually, when you look at it, at the literal heart of it, it's saying, be a pioneer. Be free to actually let go without there being a whole, maybe even idea of what's on the other side. In our human lives, physical lives, we go on a journey because we know the destination. We're going on holiday somewhere. We know where we're going, and we can feel very out of our comfort zone when we're just doing something and we don't know where it's going to take us. And this is something where, for most of us, we don't know where it's going to take us, to absolutely drop the resistance. And it doesn't mean that it's always going to be a bed of roses, because might be listening and thinking, well, that's okay for you, but if I do that, what's going to happen to my life? All I would say is you're going to get more clarity, whatever it is, because you're going to see the truth. And as the old saying goes, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And it can be true. And our truths are true in that moment for how we need to understand it. That's something I've learned over the years, that a truth may be different to someone else in their perspective, or different on a different day or a different year, because it is in that moment how the universe is working and how we are interpreting it to how we need to view it. So it sounds like truth is being sort of shifting and changing. It's just that our truths are unique to us. So that is the other experience, I feel, of deeply going into, for want of a better word, the heart of you, because no one will know your truths better than you. There will be, yes, channels. There will be interesting conversations. Hopefully people find this an interesting conversation. There will be all sorts of things that will have little light bulb moments and things that go, oh, maybe, or I take that part, whatever. The true teacher is it within you, is it within your heart? Because when you let that go as well, you've got the expansiveness to hear yourself within there. I'm sure the universe didn't have everything, the amount of energy that it has, without wanting it to have these different expressions. Otherwise, what would be the point if everything that was created and did was the same? This is why I think of it as the universe is learning and experiencing through its own experiences and through our experiences. So there's nothing wrong with experiencing. It's not like, well, if I give over to that, I will never do anything again. Of course you will. But there's a freedom that comes with it, I feel, because you really know the truth of your heart. And when push comes to shove and different really difficult things happen, that is where you can find a home. That is where you can find a solace within. And it's not something has left me. I have been abandoned when you're feeling really hard and the resistance comes up again, because you actually know it can't be, because you're living and breathing. It's there. It's always going to be there. It's just about having the fortitude, to use one of Zac's words, to actually trust in yourself to find what's there and move past things like the self-loathing. Very easy statement to say, move past it. But these things, just go into at least acceptance. Say, okay, I'll work on that in the future, but I accept. And if you can accept, you can become whole. He's talking about integrity a lot at the moment, and the true meaning of integrity. Of course, integrity is about honesty and truth and so forth, but it's about being divided, the whole coming together. He's been suggesting to people to literally call upon the frequency of integrity, call it into your body so that you can actually become whole. And, you know, no, his clever little mind, if you can call it that, you know, is going that actually when people are coming whole, all of these things are easier to do. So there's a means to an end. We're seeing it all in the all these different parts, or on an everyday basis, we often see it. But the truth is, it all boils down to coming back to who we truly are as a part of the universe, to me.
Yeah. I mean, it reeks of the truth serum, light to wave to matter, recognized and realized with your attention and intention within Taoism. It's an invocation of what we call Shen Gong, spirit power. When those two things arise, all is revealed, all is dissolved and returned back to whole. And that is in the form of currency. The currency of this distorted stream of variables is energy potential. That energy potential is met with vibratory frequential resonance. Once you meet that, oh yes, it will be yours, oh yes, it will. But from the metaphysics of Tao perspective, the mother is the animation to all things. She is the animation to everything and anything that you can create within your mind, introspective, outrospective, analytical. It becomes whole. And so from the animation of the mother, she animates consciousness, consciousness animates the spirit, spirit animates energy, energy animates the body, which is the lower frequential state of distortion, which is energy at a much slower rate of repeatability, which is really where I find most people stay between the material state and the energy. It's called, I refer to it as the spiritual baby shit. They don't really they don't pull their head up out of the water and take a breath. They don't actualize their spirit. They don't have imperium or dominion over the material, which is really the truth, because you are all things. And so they play that distortive sort of psyop where it must be part of an identity to be so. I mean, the actual catalyst for change or completion, which is what we call the trilogy of Taoist alchemy, is creation, completion, and rebirth. Find that in what we refer to as the great bellows. You are contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Your mission, if you choose to accept it. And from that, your Sherlock to your Watson, things are relevant. Your deduction is decipherable, and things become very clear. And so when you start to recognize that all these things are nothing, that I have never met the convergence of past, present, and future in a moment where I identify as San Qing or an individual. That moment is now. I've seen everything from gangrenous flesh turn back to pink in color in 40 minutes, bones fused, tumors disappear, gaseous seal before my very eyes, healings upon healings on a daily basis. That's my regular tuning fork, because I want more of the same. That's my favorite. So guess what? I get more of the same. But the truth be known, that material distortion is nothing more than being able to experience breath in and breath out. And so you'll never, ever get to a point where you're sitting down, cultivating your angels, lighting incense, calling in the next wave of intuition. When the rubber meets the road, that's the only time you're an experiencer. And it's a repeatability that is a resonance that you have cultivated yourself back to your original default. that doesn't require your personality. It doesn't require yourself at all.
Mm.
Yet this is the paradox of most conflicts of experience, because the people refer to Taoism and they have this little fluffy Hollywood version of self where, oh, but you're a priest. You just said fuck. I said, I'll say fuck again, because that has nothing to do with the truth. The truth is you are not emanating that holy stream, because your judgment of self is being seen loud and clear through your assessment of what I am supposed to be in your version of reality. Your subjectivity is very clear. Whereas if you are truly in the stream of the primordial mother from the Taoism that I teach from an alchemical process, the Wu Ji, which evokes what we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, is a serendipitous, synchronistic flow that is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And so you can never drink from that cup and have it be empty. It is forever overflowing. And that in turn is who you really are. So a variable of a deficient state where you feel abrasive and prickly because I say fuck means that there are things right there that you need to actually embrace and give it a big hug and a kiss and allow yourself to recognize that truth serum from a Taoist rites of passage is accept and allow everything at face value. That is that is problematic for anybody on a virtue signaling version of self. That means when you act in virtue, you have none, because it's a conjured up identity process that is just contrived within the finite mind and a manipulation of self. And this is where most people get, animosity and disdain, and they refer to religion as dogmatic ideologies and some type of like mind cult, because they've yet to take the real ancient scripture that is a message that reflects you back to yourself. You're not doing anything else. You are experiencing thyself as whole.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my football team is better than yours. It refers back to, over 30 years ago, when I told one of my friends who was, a devout, practitioner of Judaism, I said, I just was ordained as a priest, have my name carved in a monastery in China, blah, blah, blah. Oh, China. What kind of priest are you? And I said, oh, well, it's Taoism. And in the same breath, there is only one God. Okay, relax, buddy. Take a breather. Inhale, exhale. When we refer to the dialogue to the monologue within a Taoist path, we're speaking on different facets of the diamond that ultimately return to the monologue of the primordial mother. My relationship with the spirit world as a Wu Zi, which is a communicator between the material and spirit world, is that I'm able to have dialogue with over 171 of my teachers that are just facets of the primordial mother creating holiness. And so we have a God for everything, a God for the door, a God for the toilet, a God for, because it's still iterations of self. This is a lot to consume, one big mouthful of that, recognizing that you are everything. Well, sounds like you are the chosen one. You are not special. Oh, yes, I am. I'm very special, as are you, as are we, as are the completion of self, which is whole. Do you find that you come across this abrasive abreaction that people have where they're like, well, that has been conditioned into me. No one has that power as a facet of a human being to be able to emulate and emanate these types of godly states. And I'm using the word God because that's something that's a universal thing. I refer to the primordial mother, but guess what? You say tomato, I say tomato. It's all gravy, baby.
Exactly. It's I think it returns, as you were speaking, I was thinking of something that for quite a long time now, through when Zac is doing these transmissions and whatever it is about at that time, is asking the question of people to move away from judgment and back into curiosity, which was our natural state of being. And again, all of these things, there's so much within them at the level that you are hearing it, ingesting it. But it's often those things that you return to, and then you get a different layer or a different perspective. And to me, one of those things that he was doing after a little while of hearing about this is that judgment thing is a big part of the resistance, because we wear our likes, dislikes, choices, but also how we've been conditioned, and we might not realize it. I've heard an awful lot of spiritual people who are amazing people suddenly having very, very strong judgments on people who they judge as non-spiritual by their way of living their life, or their choices, or their work, or how they parent, or whatever else it might actually be. And who's to say what being spiritual is anyway? And it shocks me a little bit, maybe because I haven't been out in the world seeing that so much. And then I could sort of start to see what Zac was doing there, because actually by just encouraging people to return from that, again, it opens, it takes off that resistance. And rather than clinging to a lot of what the human condition is about, safety, I have found safety in this particular belief system. And that could be an actual belief system, but it could simply be believing your team is better than another team, that your country is doing the right thing and another one is doing the wrong thing, or whatever it might be. The reason why we often turn those beliefs into something that becomes a very solid structure, because I feel it in the sense of in the energy field, you know, we're actually wearing them and we're holding them. And then when someone says something, particularly if we're not in balance, we're having an off day, on a day when we might be actually naturally quite at one with everything, it might float over us. We almost don't hear it. It's just, oh, this is a person I get on well with. And you just, the conversation gets steered in a different direction. When, however, we're being triggered and we've got more resistance going on, or there might be some of the self-loathing or loathing of other things, it hits and it's like jarring, and the person reacts, and then we know what happens with all of that, and we move further and further and further away from the oneness state, which is the thing that's actually going to give us the comfort. We move away from the one thing that is actually going to help us. So this moving from that judgment state to curiosity. And I know you asked about me particularly, and it used to bother me a lot more when I was younger, far more in a, what are people going to think about me? And it was far more, I had a lot of shame, a lot of things like this that I worked on. It was something that had extended from beyond this life, I believe, and early life. And so again, that shame I was wearing. So if someone was seeing it and not liking it or saying something or a judgment about it, I would immediately be in that shame state. And so I lived this very double life for maybe almost half of my life, of how old I am now, where they might all be loved ones, but they would see different parts. I became such a chameleon. And it was so that I didn't make them feel uncomfortable and produce those judgments. Now in a far more, I mean, it does say you get more comfortable as you get older as well, just generally in yourself. And I'm just me, I'm just Janet, who I am. And that's fine. I used to, many years ago, I used to go and I did a lot of spirit lease work. So I was called to, when I lived in London, I'd go to a lot of what would be claimed as haunted houses, whether it was trauma energy, whatever. And I would do space clearing and different things. And the amount of times when, because I was traveling on the tube and how I actually look And back then, you know, just to fit in, you know, a lot of makeup and all the rest of it, but in very normal clothes. The amount of people that would open the door and actually look quite disappointed, you know, that I wasn't coming in what they, you know, with a big pointy hat and a cloak and carrying a wand. And this is before Harry Potter, and doing all these different things. And I thought I was almost like by being who I was, just making them more comfortable. But they almost wanted me to wear a part. And that was quite interesting, because I'd been the other way, where if I talked about things, that would promote, you know, oh, she's a bit wacky, she's a bit out there, she's a bit, you know. And so now you just think it actually takes a lot of energy to try and adapt, or to make other people feel particularly comfortable. But sort of living on the edges, because I've heard it so much, Zac sort of really pounded it into me, you know, the kindness, the compassion, the grace, to actually be kind to myself and just go, well, this is me. And not like this is me, take it or leave it, in the sense of like pushing upon others. I feel that if I can be comfortable in myself, again, it radiates. Hopefully that means someone else will feel very comfortable in them. And the more, ideally, because I'm human and I probably do have judgments that I don't even realize, because we've all got deep-seated things. But when something comes up, I choose a curiosity state, or I aim to choose a far more curious state. Because actually, when someone comes back at you and says something, and you're actually just curious, and you say, why is that? Often people can't even explain. But the main thing about asking, why is that? Or just tell me more. So a bit from my therapy background there, really, you know, just very naturally being, you know, tell me more. It makes them also consider. So it's not about putting people on the spot, or doing the, well, I've gone into a curiosity state and you're bad, you're doing judgment. But just from a comfort level of living life, in that sense of, and actually if someone sort of question, think, oh, why did I think that? You know, who knows, maybe that will start taking one brick out of their resistance in that sense. So yeah, it's been an interest, even now, of course, and of course the way that we live, and so much is, you know, online and different things, and people are very outspoken with their thoughts and opinions and so forth. I used to think, if I'm going to do anything like that, I'm going to have to nurture a really, really hard skin. But that's actually the reverse. Actually, what I need to do is everything that we've been talking about, just go expanded into the universe, and it is what it is. Their opinion is none of my business.
Back that into the, yeah. What people think about you is none of your business.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, variables. It just, it's a similar path. The resistance people have against someone who lives and breathes the passion of the Chinese people and my ancient roots in Taoism that go back thousands of years is comedy to me, because if you erase your personality, that's a mistake. I drive my side by side in the desert 100 miles an hour, eat chocolate bonbons, and still am a deficient human being that subscribes to Netflix. That doesn't make that moment actualized. And so people have these fluffy variables where they want this soft little Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory version of self, where they get the rainbow candy bar. Yet if you push on it and take a bite, they shit the bed, because they're so fragile. They're actually not embodying themselves. They're not whole. They're just attempting to eat around the outside of one part of the piece of themselves that they do not want to taste. And when you don't want to taste it, that's fine. But recognize that your absolute truth is yours. And if you attempt to be abrasive and domineering by giving me your version of reality as an absolute, I suggest everyone run in the other direction, because you are deluded. You are very far from center point, because your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. The absolute truth is your truth and no one else's. And so, you know, 30 years ago, someone would go, what do you do? Oh, I'm a Taoist priest. Well, what is that? I do exorcisms. Oh, today, that same person that had a facet or breaking of psyche which would be considered a some form of like a personality disorder, or furthermore something deeper rooted that I've seen dissolve in seconds, like bipolar or schizophrenia, which is really a commandeering and overshadowing, and the inability for someone to control the operating system. When you help them understand how to use their operating system, this all dissolves and returns back into a cycle, and they become expansive. There's no room for that distortion, but you must help them condition themselves back to that holy stream. That requires a relationship that is more intimate with self, that there are components that will bring them to that. And if it's not an evidence-based thing of childlike in your nature, accept everything at face value, and you need a little bit more support or nudging in the direction of holiness, this is where the method to the madness comes in. That's where Taoist alchemy, in my opinion, is second to none. And I'm a fanboy because it's repeatable and it's been used by millions of people before me. And the way I teach it, even natives from across the Asian landscape will come and find this technique of cultivation because it's second to none. It's not some contrived, distorted, ego-based, Chigo-based individual in some temple somewhere using a hierarchy where you must kiss the ring before you are actualized, which is where people get bitter about dogmatic sort of like religion. It's about you are being, I am you. The student is the teacher is the student. I am the ambassador and I am the concierge to your goodwill. And by sharing these facets of self and helping you remember who you really are, everything comes back online. And that is a practice, an intimate relationship that returns to that holy stream. But people just want to continue with this nonsensical stuff. All the stuff that I see online for Taoism is, and I have a personality, trash, garbage, because they don't want to meet that moment. And so when they don't meet the moment, it's just a fluffy thing where it's not battle tested. You're not actually owning thyself. You're just like, please, can you be the wet rag that helps me wipe my own butt? Because I don't want to actually engage with myself and become whole, which means you have to feel. Feeling into emanated embodiment is how you create ownership and return back to that holy stream. And so physicality-wise, it's strange. You know, I just put a video up about a week ago on social media. I found some videos 15 years ago when I was still focusing a little bit on bodybuilding and powerlifting that I started when I was a young boy. And, you know, I was maybe 300 pounds, 18% body fat. And people are like, what the is this? Where did this come from? Because this is just another facet of self. I just put my attention, intention to something and create it. You know, I just walked into the gym the other day and squatted 400 pounds to the ground for 5 reps. No problems. Because I still own the body. That's how I entered into it. So easily being able to ascend, because this is a ground control basis, this avatar, for you to create this holiness. You must recognize there is an integration process. And you can just go, no, well, it's just now. Excellent. Now see how that plays out through your human being experience, because the body will be met with the corruption, the exogenous trails of distortion. And so most people become inverted because they take on too much of the intuitive state, yet they're not actualizing the actual inhale and exhale of the primordial mother that creates yang in this. The material is created by the mother's breath. And so this is now something that you have to integrate. Either people go from one extreme of the needle to the other. They either invert too much of the intuitive state into the body, yet they're not regulating and actualizing the body. So the body starts to break down, and it starts with simplicity. So what is that? Insulin resistance. The body's mitochondria doesn't function properly. You start to watch things, hubcaps come off the wheels. And this is fundamentally one of the biggest corruptors, especially within America, of most people's inability. I'm of the light. I am the light. That's great. Then don't use the body, trash it and toss it away. That's not the path of a Taoist. We we value immortality, and longevity is a component of your journey of cultivation within this experience. And that's just the path of the Taoist. It's not an absolute. It's just we like to extend this re-up. You know, as my son would say, I'm playing Super Mario, I get another life. Yeah, I want to extend that and enjoy and enrich as much as possible the fact that anything is possible. So why would I want to prematurely end that experience when I can enrich it and expand it and show people how to take ownership of themselves as a whole and embody it also? Because you're now contributing from a Taoist perspective. The rite of passage is to contribute to humanity's raising of awareness of this holy stream. That from that, there's a facet we refer to as love, but that's the lowest rut of entry level. Love, then gratitude, and then ultimately accepting and allowing all things as one. So there's a gradient of such, because, you know, love is so subjective. It could be razor blades and bunny rabbits to one person and rainbows and unicorns to another, until you're met with a universal conditioned resonance that is an absolute that cannot be distorted. It's just a servitude and selflessness that doesn't require your participation. There's this tug of war that goes on, and there's nothing wrong with that. You've met the marathon at this certain level. Here's the baton. Let's get you going. Let's condition you into something that is not a sprint. It is a marathon. It is an endurance. It is an expansive stress, adaptation, and expansion that comes with everyone's awareness of self. And you're just not limited by the psyop of psyche. I feel that psychological process is the very corruption that was met earlier in a human timeline. So, you know, we're body, mind, and spirit. Whoa. Where is there a separate part to anything? As a holy stream, all is one, one is all. It doesn't, there is no separation. I mean, this is a conflict that most people have. So they get on their path, and I'm wrapping myself, I'm protecting myself, and I want to help this person because I'm a virtue. I want them to be well. And it's always a great way to start. You feel into it, and you recognize that, oh my goodness, through my attention, intention, all of a sudden things start to form. They start to regulate. They start to return to holiness, and distortion is return to whole. Witness a miracle, paranormal, supernatural, some type of clairvoyant mediumship channeling. There's a healing element. There's an elemental element that gets so exciting. It's like, this is the first taste. Elementary, my dear Watson. The deduction is so potent to find yourself. Let's get on. Let's get down with the get down. Let's make you the very best that you can be, which is nothing. And then, what did you just say? Oh, let me rephrase that. No, I'm not. You can sit with it and have your mind melted. Because the truth be known, once you have arrived, you didn't go anywhere. And so people are like, what does that mean? Well, we refer to it within Taoism. Let the man that has never left his village, let him know that he has seen the world. Because it's right here. Potency upon potency.
Absolutely. There are many ways, as we know, as many people as there are on the planet, there's ways of finding what will open up that light within, to open up to that realization of everything being within. And something Zac said years and years ago now, and I think it was when I used to do one-to-ones, and he was talking to a guy who was literally a rocket scientist, and they used to talk about all sorts of really fascinating, stuff and language that I didn't really understand a lot. But he was asking him a bit of like the meaning of the life type questions, and he just simply said, the universe is inside your heart, and your heart is in the universe. And if you meditate on that was that particular situation, you know, he sort of said, you will find everything that you are looking for. So it was separate from, he used to bring, you know, some of his work conundrums in and talk to Zac about them, but they were talking about sort of big life situations, and it was just this element. And then when I used to teach for a while, I used to teach workshops on channeling, and Zac would lead them pretty much, and he would have different methods depending on the people that were there, and it was all about opening up really to all of these things. And he would often say this at that time as well: the universe is in your heart. And it's almost like that chip away, all these little nuggets, and people will receive them in lots of different ways. I'm talking about Zac because that's my experience and that's what I know, and from many other different aspects of other parts of my life and different parts of my work, but here it's really sort of essential about Zac doing this. And it's really like you don't know which one is the one that will get through that final bit and allow that light. If it feels to me, he started with the goal of where we were going, it would bring up a lot of stuff for people of, do I really want that? What does that really mean? This, that, and the other. So it's sort of working on all of these different levels of life being lived in the moment now, from what's going on externally to what's going on internally, and sort of finding a level of self-mastery and this like maturity, spiritual maturity in it, to get to those points, to keep chipping away to that ultimate realization that everything that you're actually working towards is that inner peace of being everything and nothing all at once. And being everything and nothing all at once, yes, if it is in your heart to help a whole load of people, that will come through, but you will receive help yourself. Often there's a reflection. What we actually desire is what we are desiring ourselves. Sometimes I found that the people who are most giving in the world, in their deepest hearts, they have a need and a desire that they might not even have recognized. And there's nothing wrong in that either, you know. So often our desires, he says we're in a time of heart's desire rather than suffering. And he means that in the sense of, there's been so much talked about suffering and moving through spiritual growth through suffering. And he says, actually, it's through heart's desire. But I think it's a clever little Zacism as well, where he turns things around, because actually the more you're going into your heart, the more chip, you're opening it up. And then by living out those desires, and he says most people's desire ultimately is on some level being of service. So it actually comes down to that, but you're doing it because you want to, not because you feel you should, which shifts you into a different vibration as well. You then start to really unlock these treasures that we have all been born with, that are there. It's just life, as you said, how you said, like being childlike. When you think as a child is curious, a child that is nurtured has a natural way of being drawn to the things it wants and likes and people. It just naturally has that. And the more we can return to that state, or even earlier that state of the soul, of the oneness with everything, the more I feel we were very likely to find peace and actually do the things that we want to do, still live our lives, but live it in a way which is serving a greater picture, you know, is actually living from a place of heart's desire without it being a try, or what we think our heart's desires are, what we think they should be, or what we've been holding on to from some different aspect of ourselves or whatever else. So it does all return to nothing, except, as we know, for understandably. And I know years ago, if someone said to me, you're going to go through all of this for all of these years and ultimately you're going to return to nothing, I'd probably, a bit like giving a free ticket to something, I probably would have given it back and gone, all right, thanks. Because it's too vast a concept to me at that time. However, by working through lots of things and discovering it, I mean, there's nothing better, is it? Like, say if you're on holiday and you discover a little place or a little gem or a little restaurant or something, and it feels like you're the first person ever to discover it. And so I think actually having those discoveries within yourself, yes, all the different types of teachers, whatever those teachers or helpers can be, or friendships, can lead you there, but actually it might not be a unique experience because everyone's having it that's getting there, but it feels unique because it feels unique for yourself. And there is something that Zac has always done, and as time moves on, I realize more and more elements within it is literally, he is Zac. He's after, Guide for the Future, we said that's too much of a mouthful, and I think he was having a bit of a laugh with us anyway. And then when he said, "Oh, you can call me Zachariah," and then that was shortened to Zac, his whole idea is, yes, when he's put on the spot, who, what connections he has, yes, he can say, but ultimately he wants people to feel them as exactly the same as them, a peer, a friend. And the whole idea is that we see the whole world in that way. Just because the wisdom that is coming through might be something that can really help you in your life doesn't mean that it's out there. It's coming from in him. Everything he is saying is reminding you of something that deep in your heart, in a way you already know, or is a remembering of what's to come, which is something he did a meditation a couple of months ago that was called Remember Who You're Becoming, or something. It said a play on words, but it's so clever because it's actually, even if it's something we haven't experienced in linear time in this life, somewhere deep inside, because it's part of the universe, we know. But it can be difficult living a life, going to work, doing all the things that we're doing, to be able to just always go and know this. So actually being able to have these different vehicles to bring in the information and to chip away for you to finally have that discovery, and all the discoveries you have along that journey for, as he would say, for betterment for all. And he's just as passionate about the planet and nature and animals as he is for humans. The idea is if the humans can come out of their funk and sort it out, then everything else can get sorted, because the problems that we have really have come from humans. So get the humans sorted and the other stuff will sort itself out. And so I see it a little bit in that way, that it's the ultimate goal. And maybe when people listen to Zac, they won't hear those words and what we've been talking about maybe as directly as we're doing here, but it's absolutely in the heart. It's in the heart of everything. And it's this absolute fact. The universe is in our hearts, and we're holographic and fractals of the whole, and vice versa, and all the rest of it. And so ultimately, when you can start thinking, well, where do I end and this begins, you can just let all of that go, because actually there isn't. It's just one. It just is.
More
it's nothing and it's everything at the same time.
Yeah. Well, this has been incredible. What an amazing little communion here, a little union of such a revelation of what is an absolute truth serum, which is we are all one, and one is all. The simplicity of such. I'm very curious, as everyone will be, the potency of today's conversation. Just once that I want people to go out through just the resonance of self. You are just holding that node, and we feel that through this conversation. So I want people to go out. Where can they find? Are you doing one-on-ones? Are you training people? Where can people find the wisdom teaching of Zac?
The energy at the moment is very much in. We've got something called Zac's Portal, and this is on Patreon. My colleague Hazel, who was actually the very first person to speak to Zac, who has a real beautiful relationship really with him, like a friendship. She's been interviewing him for a long time. So we have many years worth on there, but we have a monthly deep dive, which is like a cosmic classroom where we go really deeply into things. We have a monthly, oh my goodness, they are amazing. The channel meditations, they're just done in one take. The feedback that we get of the changes from them. So they're all on there. And we always do a freebie Zac chat. And that used to be purely for our patrons and people had to go there. However, a little bit of serendipity Hazel pressed the wrong button a while ago and suddenly it went public. So we have our a YouTube channel there, which is, everything's called Zac's Portal. So it's Zac's Portal there, where you can see all the free monthly, and these are timely. The other ones are timeless. They're of the time, but they're timeless. And they're very aligning the meditations that go with for that month and then on to help people integrate everything that's going on. But the Zac chats are very much of the moment. And so there's also my website, planet-therapies.com. But this is really where we're putting our energy so that we can bring it out to the wider audience. I've not been well for the last 4 years, and I'm coming back out a bit like head above the parapet. I'd say that I've been flying under the radar. So we've been able to deliver everything, but I've been really looking after my energy, and all the things that I did before, the one-to-ones, all the workshops, all the teaching, it's just gone on hold. I'm in flow at the moment. So I'm not saying different things are going to happen. I literally don't know. And we literally just, we're seeing how things flow, but as we are, magical things are happening. Like, you know, you inviting me on here for this really fascinating, I found it, conversation that we've been having. So, but we would love people just to come in to Patreon. Like I say, it's /Zac's Portal, Z-A-C, he spells it, Zac's Portal. And yeah, come and join us, come for the freebies. And if, you know, we do it so that it's no contracts. It's sign up for one month. You can cancel anytime just to actually see. But we would love more people, especially the meditations, to experience them, because you can let go into literally, as we say, that oneness and just let the resistance go. Let it happen. So that's me.
I love it. So we're going to put everything under this podcast.
Thank you.
Where everyone can find you. I want everyone to go out and experience what that is. Students, disciples, 126 are subscribers to this channel. Go and experience what Zac is offering through Janet as a conduit, a catalyst, a mood node of awareness that is holy in a distorted material state, which is the wisdom speaks louder and louder and louder. So I am forever grateful that you have taken your time to share a part of yourself here today. And I look forward to a conversation in the future. And thank you. I'm very grateful for you.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And so I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I'm your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.